I would like to call the April 12th regular meeting to order. It's 5:30 p.m. There is a quorum present, and notice of this meeting has been posted in a time and manner required by law. Mr. Jones, would you please call the roll?
Yes, sir. Mr. Cliff Williams.
Present.
Scott Carson.
Present.
Charles Perry.
Present.
Kyle Hogemeyer.
Present.
Ms. Paulette Traylor.
Present.
My name is Chad Jones, and Ms. Nikita Lagway is not here this evening. Thank you.
The board will hear comments from the audience only during the public comment portion of the meeting. The public comment portion of the meeting will be no longer than 30 minutes total. Each speaker will be allowed a maximum of 3 minutes to address the board. Groups of 5 or more people who wish to express the same viewpoint on an issue must appoint a representative to speak for the group and will have 3 minutes to present. Please respect the privacy of others and refrain from identifying students, employees, and other community members by name. I will determine whether the speaker has attempted to solve a matter administratively through resolution channels established by policy. If not, the speaker will be referred to the appropriate policy to seek resolution. Disruption of this meeting will not be tolerated at any time. Per board policy, the board does not respond during public comments. We have 2 people that have signed up to speak tonight. First off is Ms. Diane Hivner.
My topic this evening is the bots. I'm sorry that I have to continue to discuss the divisiveness that has been perpetuated between the Board of Trustees and we, the people. The discussion of reserved seating has been paramount for the several months. Board members have indicated that is not their doing. In other words, they said, we have no say-so in that. Okay. Administrative staff has indicated that this seating arrangement is to show the board their appreciation. Oh, by the way, I want to inform the administrative staff that this meeting is for we, the people, to become informed. The most outrageous explanation was from a member of the administrative staff who indicated that these reserved scarves were used many years ago. They were recently found in a box in a storage closet. It was decided to retreat to the past and use them rather than looking to the future. What is going on here? We, the people, elected you, the board members, to look to the future rather than function in the past. I'm here tonight to assist you in this endeavor. These reserved scars came from a storage box. I am presenting a storage box for their return to the closet. I would like each person sitting in a reserved seat to place their scarf in the storage box by the end of this board meeting so that this issue can once and for all be placed in the past where it belongs. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hivner. Our next person is Robert Holder.
Thank you, Kyle. Now, you know we're here in an effort to have you change your criteria for school materials. Specifically, the school books which you allow, which teach and even celebrate racism, and the school books containing detailed pornographic materials and even instructions. Apparently, these are what you believe to be academic. You can easily change that criteria, but refuse to do so. And you should hire someone to advise you as to how to increase student knowledge and replace these school books bought with my money and folks here with materials which contribute to increased knowledge, because we trail so far behind not only the world, but we're even 42nd within the United States. Every week there are more and more teachers caught diddling with their students. It's almost an epidemic level. This grooming of our youth certainly contributes to that, and only the tip of the iceberg gets reported. Why do you want to destroy our culture to support this country's destruction? Then you know about the sexually confused girl in Tennessee who killed those 9-year-old kids. Clearly, her parents were supportive of her choices, and she felt okay with her life since at 28 she was still living at home. That was another in a series of sexually confused young people committing mass murder. And that was quickly followed by a young sexually confused man from Kentucky who went into a bank in Louisville and killed 10 people, or killed several people. And if you taught science, they would know it's impossible to change an X to a Y or the reverse. And greatly reduce the suicides of these folks when they eventually realize the truth because their brains mature to that point and learn that it's impossible to reverse it. And the same is true of gays. That's why there's a very high suicide rate in that group today. Although trying it for 100 years, government had finally dumbed down education sufficiently to implement what may be Stalin's greatest hoax, man-made climate change. And I can show you, I showed you the 1919 article, front New York Times, big article, 3 years, both poles will be melted. And we replace it with so-called green energy, which more destroys the environment, consumes more energy, and creates more pollution than what we have, far more. Anyone buying a coal-fired car, called an EV, is getting a vehicle which will consume more energy and create more pollution than a full-sized Hummer. Subsidized climate scientists are the choice for this versus geophysicists who are the real climatologists.
Time has expired.
All right, there's an attached intel report from the federal government.
Mr. Holder,
When
we
you read
appreciate
it,
you
if
coming.
you don't get mad
Thank
or
you.
don't get scared, you're not paying attention.
Ms. Hibner, Mr. Holden, thank you for taking your time to come speak tonight. The board will now convene into closed session for the purposes of considering matters for which the closed sessions are authorized by Title V, Chapter 551, Texas Government Code, Sections .071 through .084. A, discuss teacher resignations and consider approval of teacher appointments, Texas Government Code 551.074. Discuss, consider, B, discuss, consider professional Chapter 21 teachers and administrative contracts for 2021-2022, Texas Government Code 551.074. Discuss and consider professional non-Chapter 21 contracts for 21-22, Texas Government Code 551.074. Safety and security campus, or D, safety and security campus evaluations and review of findings. Closed session pursuant to Texas Government Code 551.076 and 551.089. Deliberation regarding security devices and security audits. E, discuss and consider possible take action items regarding end-of-year termination of probationary contract for Brandy Cummings, teacher at Brabham Middle School. It is 5:38 p.m.
President Hagemeyer,
Yes, ma'am.
could you please call correction to the items B and C that the contracts are for the school years 2023, 2024?
Yes, ma'am. So, rereading item B, discuss and consider professional Chapter 21 teachers and administrative contracts for the 2023 and 2024 years, Texas Government Code 551.074. Item C will read, discuss, consider professional non-Chapter 21 contracts for 2023 and 2024, Texas Government Code 551.074. It is 5:39 p.m. and we will convene into closed session. The board will now convene into open session. It is 6:44 p.m. Are there any motions from closed session? Mr. Williams.
I make a motion that we accept the superintendent's recommendation on the professional personnel listed.
We have a motion by Mr. Williams, a second by Mr. Carson. Is there any further questions? All those in favor? Motion carries 6-0. Mr. Williams.
I make a motion that we accept the superintendent's recommendation on the professional personnel listed on List A.
I have a motion by Mr. Williams, second by Ms. Traylor. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor? Motion carries 6-0. Mr. Williams.
I make a motion that we accept the superintendent's recommendation on the professional personnel listed on List B.
We have a motion by Mr. Williams, a second by Mr. Carson. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor? Motion carries 6-0. Mr. Williams.
I move to terminate the probationary contract of Ms. Brandy Cummins at the end of the contract term in the best interest of the district and direct the superintendent to give written notice as required by law.
We have a motion by Mr. Williams, a second by Mr. Jones. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor? Motion carries 6-0. At this time, I'll ask Ms. Jamie Fels to come forward.
Good evening, board. Good evening, Ms. Rogers. I would like to introduce Mr. Eric Burns, our principal of Lynn Lucas Middle School, and his students will be leading the pledge and prayer.
All right, good evening, Board of Trustees, Mr. President, Ms. Rogers, community members. Tonight it is my honor to introduce a few of our most exceptional campus leaders. First, I'd like to start with my campus leadership team. A few of them are missing, but most of them are here. Would you please stand? Yes, I am putting you on the spot. Please stand.
There we go. I appreciate your leadership every day. I couldn't do my job without you all. The next group of people I would like to introduce to you all is our campus student leaders from the National Junior Honor Society. They will be leading us tonight with our pledges and our prayer. First, we have Mr. Lewis. He will be leading us with the American Pledge. Ms. Boatman. Come on, Mr. Lewis. That's you. All right. Ms. Boatman will be leading us with the Texas Pledge, and Ms. Gillard will be leading us in prayer. So.
Would you please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please join us for the Texas Pledge. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Please bow your heads in prayer. Heavenly Father, we come to you today asking you for guidance, wisdom, and support. As we begin this meeting, help us engage in meaningful discussion, allow us to grow closer as a group, and nurture the bonds of community. Amen. Amen.
Y'all give it up one more time for our National Junior Honor Society. All right, you may be seated. Next, it's the time you've all been waiting for. It's time for us to introduce our secondary student of the month. Let me tell you about this guy. His name is Derek Taylor. So this is what his teacher said about Mr. Derek. Derek is hardworking. He's a hardworking student, not only in class, but also on the tennis court. During the off season, he has been watching YouTube videos on tennis to improve his skills. And the man is a beast, okay? He has been doing well on the court, competing in singles and double matches. He also likes to work with his teammates to help them improve. Now, let me tell you about this young man from Mr. Burns. Mr. Derek Taylor, would you please come up? So, not only does this young man meet and exceeds our campus expectation, let me tell you why my leadership team chose him as Student of the Month. So oftentimes when I'm in public, I'm greeted by a parent and they say, hey, aren't you Mr. Burns? And sometimes I say, well, it depends who's asking, right? And he said, yeah, my kid goes to school at Lynn Lucas Middle School. But hey, you wouldn't know him or her because they're never in the AP's office or they don't get in trouble. So then I proceed to tell the parent, well, hey, it's my goal to get to know all of my students, all 978 of them, So I tell you what, tell your student the next time that they see me in the hall to stop, hold out their hand, shake my hand and say, "Hi, Mr. Burns, I am so-and-so, and it's nice to meet you. How's your day?" And then the parent says, "Okay, I'll tell my kid to do that." Now this young man, Derek, has exceeded my expectation because every day, this man finds me in the hallway, he shakes my hand, nice firm handshake, and he said, "Hey, Mr. Burns, how you doing? How's your day?" And I'll say, "Well, man, here's the thing, Mr. Burns, your day will get better, okay? See you later." He is a remarkable young man, a fine leader, and we are blessed to have him as a student at Lynn Lucas Middle School. Ladies and gentlemen, grab your pens and your notepad, okay? Write down the name Derek Taylor, because Mr. Burns said on April the 12th, 2023, you are witnessing greatness in the making. Derek Taylor is your April District Student of the Month for Secondary Campus.
And at this time, I would like to introduce Miss Calandra Lewis, and she is our principal at Roark Early Education Center, and she has some surprises.
I don't know about surprises. Can you hear me? All right. I don't know about surprises, but I do have a wonderful group with me today. So, thank you for having us tonight. First, I'd like to introduce my awesome Roark Early Education Center staff members that were able to come tonight. My roar cats right there, and I have some out in the foyer waiting to come in. So we've been singing, there's a song we've been singing since January, and the kids knew that the teachers were going to be looking for those students who were singing loud and proud, you know, like Miss Lewis. And so anyway, I told them, I said, "You gotta sing loud and proud because I'm taking the show on the road." "Miss Lewis, when are you taking the show on the road?" "Well, we are here tonight for this show on the road." So if you go ahead and bring those students in. And I tell you, I really wanted to bring all 280 plus students, but I couldn't. so now I get to brag, like Mr. Burns did, on my April Student of the Month. And I have, first let me tell you about her. First of all, I'll call her my mini-me. She's very sociable. And as a matter of fact, when she came tonight, she says, Miss Lewis, my parents really don't know all my friends, but I think they're gonna get to know all of my friends, Miss Lewis. I said, I'm sure they will. So let me tell you a little bit about Rachel Kamani. Rachel is a responsible, safe, and respectful, which means she arrives every day being the best she can be. She is always happy and comes in with a smile on her face. She greets everyone from the time she gets out of the car until she arrives to her classroom. She is very thoughtful and caring, and everyone is her friend. So I'd like to introduce you to the Roark Early Education Center Student of the Month, Miss Rachel Kamani.
But wait, there's more. All right, board, before we take our seats tonight, first, let us thank you all for all the things that you've done, all the things that you are doing now, and all the things that you're going to do for Willis ISD Schools. We have some special gifts from our National Junior Honor Society and our art students. So we hope, we just wanted to say that we really do appreciate all your hard work and your commitment. Thank you.
I would say the kids from Roark are going to be pretty tough to follow, so that was pretty much going to be excitement for the night. So, standing informational and ad hoc items, we have A, safety and performance. There were no accidents, no lost time injuries, no employees or workers on workers' compensation during the month of March. Are there any questions about the March safety report? Item B, financial and bill payment. Are there any questions about the financial reports and bill payment? Item C, student enrollment. Our student enrollment as of last Thursday, April 6, 2023, were 8,849 students, 223 students more than last year at this time. Is there any questions? Item D, investment report. Are there any questions regarding the investment report? Item E, bond summary projects. Are there any questions regarding investment report? Perfect. Willis High School Collaborative Team presentations. Mr. Eric King.
I am the person following Ms. Lewis and Mr. Burns, which is not fair at all. So you don't know me, I'm Eric King. I'm the proud principal of Willis High School, and tell you why I'm so proud. Thank you. We have a lot to be proud of, and it starts with teachers. And our teachers are amazing. We got a lot to be proud of, and those teachers make up some great teams. Tonight we look at a team that's amazing, a team that doesn't lower the bar but raises the bar, a team that loves on kids and loves what they do, a Attendant gets there at 6, sometimes meets in the PLCs at 6 in the morning, so they have more time for those kids. A team that has personality, and you'll see some in just 1 second, they make learning fun. And when I say English 1, that's your freshman. Just so you're aware, that may not be that fun job, teaching freshmen. But this team here is amazing. Before I introduce them, I'm going to introduce others that make this team amazing and make our other teams amazing. Ms. Natalie Prewer, our associate, Ms. Natalie Prewer. The best instructional coach in the business, Ms. Ashley Scott. At this time, introduce to you this English 1 team, and you enjoy this. Mr. Mitchell Banks, Chris Slovak, Richard Thomas, and Kelly Harden.
Thank you guys for having us here tonight. I appreciate the chance to get to come and talk about what we do on a daily basis, how much we love what we do. And we've known for a long time that there's been good things happening on our team, at our school, and in our department. So we are privileged here to get to share that with you guys. So I appreciate it. Thank you very much. So let's get started looking at map data, looking at this stuff that we do 3 times a year. And for what purpose? And when I first started teaching English 1, that was my question. For what purpose? Why are we testing these kids like this? But after seeing these results, now I know why, and I'm excited to do this and share this with you. Okay, so looking here, when in the fall, when we tested for the first time, the number of students with valid growth scores were 608, and in the winter, midway through the year, we saw an increase there with 614. All right, at or above reading level, 337, 55% of our kids are at or above reading level coming into the 9th grade, which is kind of a scary number. That means a whole big chunk of them are not where they should be. So we have our work cut out for us. But midway through the year, we raised that to 59%. Obviously still not where we need to be, but growth is happening in English 1. Okay. Looking at these numbers here, between fall and winter, we have the achievement percentile. Our kids in reading were in the 48th percentile at the beginning of the year and bumped up to 52 at mid-year, so getting over that halfway mark. Those numbers in red there are the national average for where kids should be. And as you can see, we are hovering right around that area, and we hope to push past as we get that data from our current map test that we just gave. There at the bottom, the beginning of the year map reading scores versus the middle of the year, 73 approaches, 57% meets, and 10% masters. We raised each one of those a little bit, and if you look at STAR of 2022, these are the real numbers of what our kids got last year on this STAR test. They were at 64% approaches, 52% meets, and 10% masters. So according to what the MAP scores are projecting, we look to hit above that this year on the actual STAR test.
Additionally, from fall to winter is about 3 months. So the percentage of growth occurred in 3 months' time.
Right. Okay. Looking at this is one of the reports from that map test, the growth overview. Looking at the orange diamonds, this is the projected growth. This is where they are expected to get when we start with them. The blue bars are actually what was observed. So anytime we see that bar graph get higher than those orange diamonds, that's what we're looking for right there, and that's what we were excited to see. All right, but the bottom line is, when students came into our classrooms in August, they had an end of the year 7th grade reading level. And in the middle of the year, 9th grade, that's exactly where we got them to. We grew them from end of the year 7th grade when they got to us, and in December, they were at a middle of the year 9th grade level. We obviously want to keep that growing. We want to keep that going, and by the time they're sophomores, we want them to be above sophomore level. But to be able to say that they started with us lower than they should have been, and we got them to exactly that mark where they were expected, that's a huge win for us, and a huge win for our students. Okay, the language usage was similar. We test this every time with the reading as well. Again, way above with the observed growth as opposed to the projected growth. All right, and this is projected proficiency on standardized tests that these guys will be taking in the future. The top graph here is looking at the ACT. If these guys were to take the ACT right now as freshmen, which they would never do, obviously, but if they were, we're looking at over 30% of these kids would achieve highly on the ACT right now as freshmen. Looking at the one on the bottom, it's even higher for the SAT. We're looking at almost 60% of students achieving well right now on that SAT test if they were to take it today. And then the big one, the STAR test. How do we estimate that they will do on this STAR test? Again, I showed you earlier that last year they were only at 64% for approaches on that one. If we're looking at it this year, they're projected to be at a 78.5, according to where we stand right now. So that's a pretty big number, it's a pretty big jump. We're very excited about that. All right, so how we're getting there, we've got some writing samples here that we're showing you. Student A, this is where they started. There's not a lot going on, and then all of a sudden, after 3 months' time, they're really able to expand and show their worth and show what they're talking about here. Here we have examples again from September, just a couple of months later to October. These are in co-teach classes, so we're growing, raising the bar no matter where these students are starting. High rigor, high levels of learning all across the board. Again, starting here with honors classes, doesn't matter where these guys stand, we're raising the bar from wherever they're starting and taking them to greater heights from there. Some of the ways we're doing this, lots of the things we're implementing in our rooms every single day. We've got independent reading time with choice class novels that were then followed by written responses. We're modeling with text in class as a whole, and then they're taking those skills and using them in their own reading. To activate the background knowledge, high-level questioning, inferences, annotating, and lots of in-depth discussions within the class. Again, practicing those reading strategies independently that we've taught them. Lots of small group and independent conferencing so that we can know exactly what these kids are doing and where they stand on an individual basis. And then honors classes are having quarterly outside reading novels coupled with in-class analysis discussion. And the big thing is we're taking a more holistic approach to the teach rather than just these isolated skills. I like to think about it as learning how to drive a car. And when you first start to learn how to drive a car, the first thing you learn is where the pedals are. You learn then next how to do the steering wheel, how to put it into gear, all these things in isolated skills. If that's all we ever taught kids, we said just, hey, jump in the car now and get out there on the highway, things would not go too well. They've learned these skills in isolation up until this point. 9th grade, high school, now it's time to learn how to drive the car as a whole. So we're looking at a more holistic approach rather than skills-based learning. We're putting it all together so that they know what this actually means and how to use it in school and college and out in the real world. Writing strategy, similar. We've got this going on every single day. We've introduced this ACE strategy to ensure that we have well-rounded and in-depth responses to the short answer questions they'll see on the STAR as well as essays. Opportunities to write multiple times daily, including warm-ups, these ACE responses, independent reading responses. They're writing all the time. It's nothing new. They expect it, and they are getting very good at it. Written responses on CFAs or major assignments. We're trying to make them more closely mirror what they would see on STAR tests or standardized tests. Literary analysis essays written in class after each reading assignment, and presentation and discussion of exemplar essays. We're showing them what these things should look like, letting them practice piece by piece how to get there, and then watching them celebrate themselves as they meet their goals. Some extra things that we're seeing and we're doing with them. Again, the student conferencing is a huge thing. Letting your class be able to do their thing while you meet with kids on an individual basis. That's how we really raise the bar with these kids and get them where they need to be. Not just talking to everybody at once, but getting to talk to one kid at a time. This is what you're doing well. This is where you can improve. Let's see how we can do that together. Again, with small group instruction in a similar fashion, the teacher modeling so that they know exactly what these things should look like rather than just saying, here, do it. They're saying, here's what it looks like. How can we get here? Well, we're currently right now in the middle of what we call a switcheroo. This is our second one to do this year. It's been interesting. It's been fun. Our kids seem to really like it. Over the course of 4 days, each of us teaches every single English 1 student in that school, whether they're currently on our roster or not. They switch and rotate through all 4 of us, and we teach lessons that we feel like are our strongest personally as teachers. And then we get these kids into our classrooms to hear things from a different perspective, hear things hopefully differently than they've heard before, and raise the bar in a way that they haven't seen maybe in that particular classroom all year with that same teacher. Okay? And we're looking to increase exposure to microtext, making sure that kids have constant exposure to new texts, new ways of seeing things, new ways of reading, different types of authors. And by having these smaller texts, we can do that a lot more often rather than just here and there sprinkled throughout the semester. Collaborative team meetings, like Mr. King said, we do meet once a week at 6 a.m. so that we have more time during the day to work on the stuff for our kids. That can be a little stressful at times, but it's been working well for us. In those meetings, we're constantly organizing and analyzing data, which is not our strongest suit. We are English teachers. So looking at the numbers can be a little bit overwhelming, which is probably why we need the extra time early in the morning, get a head start on that stuff. But then using that data that we finally figure out how to plan purposeful interventions in future lessons for these kids, rather than, hey, this is a lesson I taught 6 years ago, let's do that again. Well, why? And the data will let us know if we're on the right track or if we need to intervene and get in there and do something different. We revisit our learning targets that we've developed at the beginning of the year to address gaps in instruction, what's been working, what do we need to fix, and then building the checkpoints and CFAs using a backward design. We like to build these tests first. That way we know exactly what we're teaching when we go into the classroom. We know exactly where that finish line is, rather than starting a race and say, hey, let's start running. We hope you make it there. By the way, Google Maps isn't working today, so good luck. And then one of the biggest things that we do for our kids, since we do assess their writing so often, we have to constantly calibrate in order to accurately grade their written work. Since it's not just one person grading every essay, we need to make sure we're all on the same page when it comes to how we're grading this written work, and make sure that we're all assessing them in similar fashion so that they're getting exactly what they need to from each of those assignments. All right? But as a whole, as a team, we're collectively ensuring daily reading and writing practices, high expectations, high rigor, and a more holistic approach to grow these kids. We're happy with the progress we've made so far, and we look forward to continuing this in the future.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Next, item G, Lagway Elementary School Collaborative Team Presentation.
Good evening, Board President and trustees, sweet Miss Carol. I'm here this evening with our 3rd grade teachers from Lagway Elementary, and very, very proud of them. We're here to share our collaborative team process, or how we plan instruction. And I can't help but think when I was a little girl, I loved to go to the office supply store and get a grading book, and I loved to get that lesson plan book that teachers used with the date and the squares, and you could write your lessons in your lesson plan book. Well, planning instruction looks a lot different than that now. So I've got my teachers here this evening, and we're going to go through that process with you with a couple of standards that we've already taught this year. One, math, composing and decomposing numbers, and then RLA, a poetry standard in RLA. I would like to introduce my team. I do have my instructional coaches here, and Mr. King, I have to disagree with you. I have the best coaches. So Ms. Rosalind Kizzy is our math science instructional coach. Mr. Douglas is our instructional coach. He's heavily involved in technology. And then Ms. Kim Truitt, our RLA instructional coach. And then I just can't leave out my partner in crime back there, Ms. Adriana Velasco. And I have 3rd grade behind me. I've got 5 teachers here. We have actually 6 classrooms. But these 5 teachers, I'm telling you, they've worked diligently in tough times in education right now. So They are here, they are a little bit nervous. They show up every day for kids, and I need to emphasize kids because they can do whatever it takes to help kids learn and do what they need to do. But when it comes to presenting in front of adults, you get a little nervous. So I have Cherish Lowry here from the RLA team. Nicole Slott, she also teaches RLA. Tracy Wheat, RLA. And then I have Casey Willingham, Math Science. And Miss Linda Cheatham, Math and Science.
So we are Lagway's third grade collaborative team, and we're going to show you how we work together to cultivate a community of lifelong learners today to become the leaders of tomorrow. So this is our unpacking the unit plan. This is what we look at first. You can see this was our unit for November 17th through December 14th, and we look at how long we have to teach this unit, which is 14 days. We have several essential standards listed there because in reading language arts, we're always working together with several standards to make sure that our students are really understanding the text. But for today, we're going to focus on the one on the bottom there, 3.9b. And that one says that we're going to explain the rhyme scheme, the sound device, and the structural elements such as stanzas in a variety of poems. So then we go into really unpacking the unit plan. And so you see on the left there, our students notice the rhyme scheme. So we have to make sure that they can notice those things before we get them into the second part of where they're actually going to be able to explain the rhyme scheme and the sound devices and the structural elements of the poems. And we focus on that with the kids also. You can see at the bottom, the target there, I can notice rhyme scheme, sound devices, and structural elements such as stanzas in a variety of poems because we really focus on that with the students as well so that they know what they're supposed to learn. And then we go into creating the CSA. So as I said previously, we also like to start with the end in mind. Whenever we're getting ready to plan our unit, we want to make sure that we know what are those questions actually going to look like? How are these kids going to be seeing this? And we try to keep it as close to what we can that like they're going to see on the STAR test. So you can see there in our the last column, 3.9b. You can see some of the examples of questions, which lines from the poem rhyme, how are the stanzas in the poem alike, and those are some of the questions that we used to make sure that our students are prepared. And then we map out the remaining 13 days that we have in the unit. We know that we have 1 day for the CSA, and then we have the remaining 13 days to plan for and to fit in how we're going to get them to that point. So it's kind of like our roadmap to get them there. And then we go into our daily lessons. So this is our daily lesson that we use pretty much for every unit. This is the poetry unit. So I'm going to kind of skip over word study and mentor sentence, but then we go to the mentor text. And as Ms. Lowry said, that is where our essential starts. So it's a model piece. So we read and we show the kids what they need to know according to that essential. And this essential that we're talking about is poetry. So, and I'm going to get into a lesson in a minute. The next step on that puzzle piece is a practice. That's when we kind of release the kids a little bit and we kind of check. Do you know what you just learned? And we kind of guide them through that. And then the last screen piece right there is independent checkpoint. So that is when we check for our essential to see if they have mastered it, or do we need to do some reteaching and regather our strategies. And then the writing piece, we are integrating in the whole reading block. So this was a poetry unit, so we wrote poetry. This particular standard was bringing in the figurative language. We wrote with the figurative language, and that goes back to the mentor text too, because they're seeing a real published author use that skill we're trying to teach them. So, there is our lesson plan. Oh, what did I do? Okay, so 3.9b was our essential for this unit, and it's identifying the sound devices and the different varieties of poem. And this particular lesson was when we introduced narrative poetry. And so underneath of that essential is a standard that we had taught in the previous unit, fiction. So it's 3.8C, you analyze the plot elements. Well, a narrative poem has all of the plot elements. So when you teach reading, those standards spiral back in. So we make sure that we're not only reaching the standard that we're working on, but we spiral those back in when it applies to, that's just reading. You know, you do all of that stuff. So this particular unit is broke down by I do, we do, and you do. So the I do is that part where you show your mentor text and you model it as a teacher. You model your thinking, you talk about the standard as far as sound devices, the stanzas, this is a narrative poem, and then you bring in your poetry elements, and from the previous, we brought in the plot elements. So the second is we do. So we had a mentor sentence called one sister for self. So we were able to also spiral back in because it had a character, it had a setting, but also we were able to get that essential taught as far as the parts of a poetry and poem and how poetry is done. And then the you do in our plan is when the kids, we release them and we check for understanding. And this is kind of the same process we use. So we would, work on a narrative poem for 2 to 3 days, and then we would switch to a different type of poem. And then as you look over at the writing piece, that is also tied in with poetry. So we read poetry, we practice poetry, now let's write poetry. So they get to practice all of those pieces of the standard in their own writing.
So as we move through each unit, we have designated checkpoints or our common formative assessments. And we use these checkpoints to ensure that students are mastering the objectives all along the way of the unit. You can see in CFA 1, students are looking pretty good. They're doing pretty well. CFA 2, we see some, they're starting to struggle a little bit. CFA 3, we see some definitely struggling. So we're able to use that data to immediately pull kids and put them in small group, maybe work with a different teacher and fill in gaps before we keep going further into the unit. We also enter our CSA data, our final assessment, and we keep notes on the students so we can look at the student as a whole. We want to know maybe any accommodations that the student got and their current reading level. We want to look at the whole picture. What is going on with this kid, not just one score. After we take the CSA, we use Eduphoria to break down all of the learning standards. And this particular assessment had 5 learning standards. The highlighted ones were our essentials. So those are the ones that we're going to focus on. You can see that teacher 1 had a little bit of a strength with poetry elements, teacher 2 with inferencing, and teacher 3 with figurative language. So we're going to use those numbers to help us group kids and reach kids. We like to look at data for each specific standard for each specific kid. We don't want to look at a child and just say, oh, well, they made an 86, they're doing fine. Maybe there's a hole somewhere. Maybe they did make an 86, but maybe they didn't do well on elements. Well, we need to catch that because it's going to come back through. It's going to spiral back through with our other genres. We use the data from that data protocol to create our CAT time groups, and this block of time is extended learning time for all kids. So you can see again that teacher 1 is focusing on elements of poetry, teacher 2 on inferencing, teacher 3 on figurative language. And then we as a reading team work together and we drop kids' names in all on that spreadsheet based on wherever they need support, based on their CSA data. We also have an enrichment group on the far left side, and we use that for students who did show mastery of all of the essentials. Our CAT time groups are very fluid, and students are moved all the time based on need, however they're performing on different assessments.
in this particular unit, it has 3 standards, 2 of which are essential. And I'm gonna focus on the 3.2A. It's composing and decomposing numbers up to 100,000 as a sum of so many 10,000, so many thousands, so many hundreds, so many tens, and so many ones, using objects, pictorial models, and numbers including expanded notation. So that particular standard has a lot in it. Students are composing numbers or creating numbers, decomposing, taking them apart, knowing the placement of their digits, the values of their digits, how to write them in different ways. The expanded notation is brand new for them in 3rd grade, and just using the different models and manipulatives to be able to do that. And then, so we start unpacking. We look at what do the students need to know coming into this, because they've done place value in previous grades, so they have some prior knowledge. So we're building off of that. So what do they already know? What are some thinking skills that they need? What are we going to be doing? Could we be grading anything? Looking at those I cans, and coming up with some checkpoints. One particular checkpoint for that standard was, can the student show a number in more than one way when composing and decomposing? And for that particular unit, we had the 3 standards, 2 that were essential. We had 15 days. So we take those standards, look at, okay, what standards do we need more time for? What standards do we know the kids probably don't need as much time for? And we start mapping it out to see what we're doing on each day, what objective is scheduled for each day.
Okay, and like Ms. Lowry had mentioned earlier, we always start with the end in mind. So when we unpack the unit, we then go into creating our CSA. And this is an example of one of the questions that we did put on this CSA. We have place value disc on there because this is one of the manipulatives that the students are gonna see in the classroom during this particular lesson. They have to look at a model, like was one of the nouns in the essential standard, and then they have to turn it into a standard form number. And then this is another example that the students might see on the CSA as well. This part of the essential standard is actually new to 3rd grade. So this is where they're learning the expanded notation, and they're learning to decompose that number with multiplication. And then this is what one of our daily lesson examples would look like. We just took one day. And if you look at the very top, that is our I can statement. That's what we would start with in our whole group. We would break that down with the students, and we would discuss the words compose and decompose and what that might look like. And then we would go into doing an example for the students as well. So when we go into the mini lesson, that's when we do it together. So we kind of practice. The teacher would go, we would go to the board and write an example on the board and how the students move their manipulatives and use their dry erase markers on their desk to kind of write their answer as we walked around to kind of check for understanding. And then we would go into the independent practice where the students might have task cards where it would say the different forms of the number. It might have a number and they would have to flip it over and then use their manipulatives or dry erase marker to compose or decompose that number.
So, just like in reading, math also, each teacher has their own data protocol sheet. As we're going through that unit, our common formative assessments, we're putting that data on the sheet, analyzing it as we go. Are there some kids we need to pull for small group instruction that are still struggling? The kids that are getting it, they get some extension. And then we also put our CSA data on there that we'll use when we get to cut time as well.
And then this is our end of the unit data protocol. This is all of our CFAs as the 3rd grade math team, as well as our CFAs for the 3rd grade math team. And what we would do with this data is meet and kind of discuss, okay, your students scored higher than mine. How can I go about reteaching this in my class? What would that look like? What strategies can you share with me? So we're constantly working together as a team to make sure that we're all on the same page and we're sharing those strategies that maybe worked better for one teacher as opposed to the other.
take that data from our CSA and sit down as a team, look at, okay, we have the 3 essentials. They may not need extra support in all 3. This particular one, we broke it down with place value for a few days, and then we also had comparing in there. So we had a couple of days for place value, a couple of days for comparing, getting that small group instruction, and then for the kids that got it and they mastered it, they're getting some enrichment time. And again, it's fluid, it changes with each unit. If we need to make adjustments as the week's going, we do that as well.
So thank you for allowing us the opportunity to share part of our craft with you this evening. In reading, we have 9 units, and in math, we have 12. So this is an ongoing process throughout the year. Oftentimes, we're planning and studying more than 1 unit at a time. All of this would not be possible if we did not work interdependently as a team. We truly work together to grow all kids. Thank you again.
Are there any consent agenda items that we need to discuss before we take action? Mr. Williams.
Make a motion, we approve the consent agenda as presented.
We have a motion by Mr. Williams, a second by Ms. Traylor. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor? Motion carries 6-0. Item 9, discussion and possible action items. Discuss, consider approval of education specifications, ed specs.
Good evening, Board, Mrs. Rogers. The Texas Education Agency requires all school districts to create written educational program documents which guide the design process of new facilities or renovations to existing structures. At this moment in time, I'd like to introduce Senior Associate Meredith Wadasek from Stantec. She facilitated the process with district personnel to create these documents for your consideration.
Good evening, Board. Thank you for having us back. Ms. Carroll, glad to be here today. I visited with you all back in February to get this process started. So just a quick overview. Tonight, we'll review the purpose and the compliance methodology which you all took action on in February. I'll talk to you about the creation process that we used to get to that fabulous large binder that you've been handed. And then I'll give you a brief overview of the content that's in those binders. Please feel free to stop at any point if you have questions, or we can wait till the end. So as a quick reminder, Texas Education Agency put this in place back in on November 1st of 2021. It did take them quite some time to respond and answer questions during the year of 2022, which left school districts waiting for those responses to take action. So Willis has moved forward in a very timely fashion to create these education specifications so that any future buildings that you might do or renovations can be in compliance with the new guidance. Back in February, we did take action that we would look at the quantitative methodology as how we would calculate space in your buildings. And we landed on that we would design buildings to an L2 flexibility level with an L3 mindset. And just as a brief reminder, when you move from an L2 to an L3 requirement, it does change the square footage that you have to allocate per student, which is why at the time we went with an L2 model. It gives you all the flexibility to design up, but meet a minimum that is fiscally responsible for the district. The process that we used, we evaluated all of your current facilities and looked at what your square footages are in all of your spaces. We are talking only about academic facilities, so we wouldn't look at something like an administration building. TEA does not require that you write an educational specification for a bus barn or an admin building. We then looked at a little bit of benchmarking. So that benchmarking, I took all of your data that is projected for your growth models. We met and we talked about How big do you anticipate that you want your facilities that meets your Willis expectations in the future? We looked at what other districts of similar growth patterns are doing in the state to do some comparison to develop these standards. And the reason we use that benchmarking process along the way is this document is your minimum. What we did not want to do is we did not want to lock the district into creating spaces that are potentially going to be putting you in a position where you're building 20 science classrooms when in 10 years you may actually only need 12 science classrooms. So we wanted to have that type of flexibility within your plan. Your book is divided into some basic overview documentation up front, and then you'll have your pre-K with some numbered tabs. Those numbered tabs align with these color-coded spaces that we have up here for you. And at the end of each one of your facility type sections, you have an appendix that gives you this information. That is really telling you each space type inside of buildings, and then you get to the main point. So I'll talk a little bit longer on the pre-K just to explain the way it's laid out, but all of the documents have the exact same content levels in them. What you'll see is you'll see a summary of the square footage by space type. So your pre-K department or your pre-K facility does not have a goldenrod, a yellow section, which is called out as library. It also doesn't have a career and technical education section. As you get up in the grade levels, you'll see some of those spaces get added, so that is one difference. What you see from a total net usable space is that is the square footage that is in your offices and in your classrooms. The number below that is your circulation, so things like your hallways, things like your mechanical rooms that we don't call out for a minimum square footage. The state does not require that you tell us how many minimum square feet you want in a hallway. It's really based on preference of how you want to use that space. So we land on a grossing factor, and if you look over on the top right-hand side, you'll notice that we use a 1.4% grossing factor. So about 40% of your building is tied up into circulation, it's tied up into electrical, it's tied up into mechanical spaces from the perspective of what you actually have in a building square footage. Your total building area for pre-K will sit somewhere around 59,000. Again, you may design something more than that, but this would come out to be your minimum. That gets you to your total student capacity, and again, that goes back to what we voted on in February of how you wanted to calculate the spaces. You'll notice that the capacity target for your pre-K is 400. And you'll see two different capacity numbers. You'll see your total student capacity sitting at 464 with your functional student capacity at 390. The difference between that is in a total student capacity, you take every classroom and act as if it is going to be full all day, every period. So you would calculate it out at 22 students per classroom times your total instructional spaces to get to 464. In reality, in a school building, the goal is not to require a teacher to walk out of their room during conference because they need to be planning, as you've heard from all of them today, that's a very critical piece. So to utilize a building at total student capacity would mean that you would have teachers floating into those rooms all day long. That's not necessarily ideal, but in a growth situation where we might be building new facilities, waiting for something to come online, it may be something that would have to happen. The way we get to your functional student capacity, you'll notice the number 84%. I took all of their bell schedules and what their teachers are actually doing now. So your classrooms are actually being used approximately 84% of the time. The remainder of that is when they don't have students with them when they're in conference. That functional capacity could change over time if you have a change to bell schedule. We do know that there is some consideration of potential new bell schedules for next year, and so we have looked at that and we did take that into consideration in writing this document for you. So I'm gonna pause because I'm not gonna go into that level of depth on the next slides because it's all the exact same reasoning to get there. Does anybody have a question? Functional capacity utilization. Okay, great. When we move to your elementary campuses, our target is 850 students. You'll see your total student capacity at 889 with your functional at 747. Again, you can flex into some of those spaces a little bit differently to get towards that 850 a little bit more. You'll notice that you picked up the yellow library section. Just so that you are aware, Texas Education Agency does not require a pre-K facility to have a library section called out. It does require that you have library square footage in an elementary all the way through a high school campus, which is why you don't see that as a requirement in your pre-K. Your middle school design is at about 1,200 students. So your total student capacity is 1,392 with your functional student capacity at 1,169. You'll notice a gray bar has appeared at the middle school level. At the current time, there is not career and technical education courses offered in your middle school. So you may be asking, why would we put that in there? We wrote these education specifications to include potential spaces should you want to add that in the future. You now already have the work done on what any career and technical education classes might look like. So I'll use an example. If you wanted to move a principles of business, marketing, and finance class down to the 8th grade level to allow students a high school credit, you would then need a computer lab to teach that class. So we've given you the information in this document that puts you ahead of the game so that you don't have to rewrite education specifications if that is a decision. There is a clause in your document that states that career and technical education spaces are not a guaranteed space to be built. So they must confirm at the time of design if the district wants to include those specialized spaces. That keeps you from having to put them in, but it allows you to move forward because the work has already been done.
In your opinion, what are some of the major reasons why TEA even thinks they need to get involved in this?
I'm gonna leave out the whole political side of how they got to that. I'm gonna leave out the political side of how they got there. So I would say there is definitely political reasons that people want to stand up and say, you need to build extra space, you need to do this. There are definitely good things that come out of this, and I'm going to use special education as a great example. It takes a lot of square footage to make sure that our teachers and our aides and our students can remain safe in a special education classroom. In the event that a student needs to STEM, they need some extra space. So requiring districts to offer a minimum in those particular situations is not necessarily a bad thing. I do think that.
Oh, I absolutely don't think it's a bad
Right.
thing. I also think it's gonna add construction costs and other things that affect our taxpayers, and that's something else we have to have answers for.
Absolutely can get to that point.
Yes, yep.
Yes, sir. I will tell you that in doing this with the Willis team, I'm going to use science classrooms as a great example. TEA has now locked school districts into how much square footage you have to tie up into a prep room for science. I'm using that as a specific example because most school facilities do not have the minimum required square footage in a prep room right now. So if you want to do $50,000 or more of renovation to a building, now I have to evaluate my prep space. It is very hard to get that.
Yes, ma'am.
And so in writing this document, and hats off to the administration team for allowing us to be at the table and work at looking at, we don't want to write something in here that pigeonholes you as a district because it's fiscally irresponsible to your taxpayers. And so it is very much written to, hey, I'll use your high school sciences. You'll notice that we put 10 science classrooms in here. If you walk your high school, and if our high school team is still here, they have more than 10 science classrooms right now. So it's not to cause a panic of wait, we really need more science classrooms. But if we had written in this document that you need 18 science classrooms, you will have to be bound to the square footage that goes with that prep space. And so we felt very strongly that we didn't want to pigeonhole you. So it has a lot of flexibility in this document. I don't want anybody to open it up and start counting spaces and go, but wait a minute, she only put 10 and we actually have 16
Having
in there.
versatility is gonna be nice.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
No problem. Just at our high school level, your growth patterns out here, you're growing astronomically, 200 and I think 30 something students more than you were last year. So we anticipate that if you wanted to build another high school, you would build something about the same size. The same caveat happens with career and technical education in this document. We did talk about what if you were going to do a phased build. So I'm gonna build a 9th and 10th grade, and then I'm gonna add on an 11th and 12th grade over time. If you were going to do that, you would still build your core, your cafeteria, your library, to meet the total building. But the way that we put the caveat statement up front of saying you need to confirm at the time of design what to include allows you to only build the number of rooms that you need for 9th and 10th during that first year. So what other questions can I answer for you? I know that's a lot of paper. It's a lot of documents. It's a lot of it is a lot of repetitiveness, so if you were to sit there and need some light reading at night, you will notice that we wanted to create equity across campuses, and by that I mean the size of a principal's office is called out to be the same regardless of what level you teach at. So your pre-K, your high school, your elementary, we did that as an equity piece, knowing that in a design process, that can change, it can go up, but what is the minimum that every single high school principal or counselor needs to have? So that will look a little different than what your current building designs are. But again, that goes back to that benchmarking work that we did to get here. Any other questions? Thank you for allowing us to partner with you to do this.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Carson.
I move that we accept the superintendent's recommendation and approve the educational specification ed specs as submitted.
We have a motion by Mr. Carson, a second by Ms. Traylor. Any further discussion? All those opposed? Motion carries 6-0. Item B, discuss an approval of 2023-2024 shared services agreement with Conroe ISD.
Good evening. The intent and purpose of the Conroe Shared Service Agreement is to provide quality education for our hearing impaired students from ages 0 to 21. And yes, we do have to provide services under the school age. So this is something we do on an annual basis. Conroe provides this service for multiple districts in the area. So at this time, I was going to see if anyone has any questions.
How many students do we have?
So currently in Conroe ISD, we have 10 being served at different campuses in Conroe ISD that we provide transportation to because it's a part of their service agreement. We have 9 in district that we serve, that they will serve and within that shared agreement. And then we have 2 early childhood children that are not in school age at this time.
Real quick, I had to go back real quick, Kyle. I think on the last one, when they made the motion, you said.
Yeah, I was going to clarify that.
Just to clarify for the record.
All those in favor?
Gotcha.
We did that,
Okay.
so it's 6-0. So I apologize.
Just for the record.
Mr. Williams.
I move that we accept the board, I move that the board accept the superintendent's recommendation to approve the 2023-2024 shared service agreement with Conroe Independent School District.
We have a motion by Mr. Williams, a second by Mr. Jones. Is there any further discussion? Being none, all those in favor? Motion carries 6-0. Trying to see who was paying attention. Item C, discuss and consider approval of bid related to request for proposal RFP number 041023, service line replacement Cannon Elementary School.
Good evening, Board. There's a need to upgrade Cannon Elementary serving line. The scope of work would include taking out the old one and putting a new one in. The RFP 041023 was issued on March 27, 2023, and bids were due April 10, 2023. We had received 2 bids. We are recommending awarding the bid to Commercial Kitchens, and the amount needed for this project is $112,000 and $449.
Mr. Trailer.
I move that the board accept the superintendent's recommendation to award the bid related to RFP 041023 to Commercial Kitchen and approve the purchase of $112,499 for the child nutrition project, from the child nutrition budget.
We have a motion by Mr. Trailer, a second by Mr. Williams. Is there any further discussion?
How many more you have to go, Mike?
This one I have one more at the high school. So like right now, I probably we replace about 7 lines throughout the whole district.
And that's all through that grant?
Huh?
That's all money that we spent through that
Yeah,
grant?
so that's when we have to, the state requires us to have so much money in my account. And that's how, I work with Tyler and his guys and what equipment needs to be fixed at the same time and what that kind of things are going on, so.
Awesome. All those in favor? Motion carries 6-0. Item D, consideration possible action on proposed amendment to contract with BLK Architects, the middle school number 3 and auxiliary facilities project.
Thank you, sir. Good evening, board members. Ms. Rogers. I think it's bad juju not to include Dr. Hochreiter and wish him a speedy recovery. We're bringing you an amendment to our VLK agreement this evening. Essentially, when we began this process, we were going to use a design, a prototype that had already been used. As we went into the design phase of this, we have changed that to the point where we have renegotiated an increase in that fee of 0.85%. So we are asking your approval this evening of the new agreement, which will include a total fee for the designer of 4.85%.
Mr. Carson.
I move that we accept and approve the superintendent's recommendation to approve the amendment to the professional services agreements between VLK Architects Incorporated and Willis Independent School District as presented.
I have a motion by Mr. Carson, a second by Mr. Jones. Is there any further discussion? Just a quick question. So the adjustments that we're making in the deal, we're actually going to reduce the square footage, right?
We're reducing the square footage. In reality, it's actually reducing the total cost of the building as well.
Okay, do we have a rough idea of how much it's reducing?
I don't have that number in front of me at the moment.
Okay. Awesome. So we have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Okay. All those in favor? Motion carries 6-0. Item E, discuss and consider approval of ranking of proposals in response to the district's request for competitive sealed proposals to provide construction services for the Lynn Lucas Fine Arts Edition project.
Thank you, sir. The district issued a request for competitive sealed proposals for the Lynn Lucas Middle School Fine Arts project. We have received sealed proposals, and we received 2 sealed proposals, which were reviewed by both the district and Stantec Architects. One from Nash Construction LLC and one from Pogue Construction. The district administration is recommending the proposal from Nash Construction LLC for this project, and we're seeking your approval for that this evening.
Mr. Carson.
Move that we accept the superintendent's recommendation and approve the ranking as presented for the Lynn Lucas Middle School Fine Arts Edition project.
We have a motion by Mr. Carson, second by Coach Perry. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor? Motion carries 6-0.
Thank you.
Item F, consider updating violence curriculum. Ms. Locke.
All right, good evening, President Hagmeyer, members of the board. So I'm here to present our dating violence curriculum review. You will see that this is a part of our EHAA legal, and we are to instruct on prevention of child abuse, family violence, dating violence, and sex trafficking. We have 3 requirements, and you see those listed, and as I go through this presentation, we will go through each one of them in detail for you. The first one being that before we can present anything to you, it must first go to our SHAC committee, and it has been voted on twice by the SHAC committee to be presented to you tonight. So the first requirement that we have is that any course material relating to the prevention of child abuse, family violence, dating violence, and sex trafficking shall be selected by the board with the advice of the local SHAC. So I will go through it. You've received this ahead of time to go through it in detail, so I will overview it for you so you can see what our curriculum is. We did choose to do a locally created curriculum. We had a team that looked at several different options and thought our best option to really get the message across to our students would be to create it in-house locally and present it to you guys. So when this will be presented, most likely by our counselors, and we want to make sure that it's stated that this is a sensitive topic and that students who may view this, it may be sensitive and we need to have a warning and let everyone know at that moment if this brings up any feelings inside, any struggles, to reach out, and they will have people designated in the room during that presentation to support students going through this. So the goals for our dating violence presentation, we want to increase students' understanding of teen dating violence. We want to discuss how they set boundaries in relationships, and we want to increase help-seeking behavior among the students who may be involved in an abusive dating relationship. So we will also make sure during that presentation that we establish a safe space. We don't want any kind of comments negatively to students, so we will make sure that we clearly outline that at the beginning of our presentation. So here's one question that's asked a lot is, why are we asked to do this, and is it an issue? You can see up there is that several studies have been done, and one of them said that 1 in 3 7th graders have reported being a victim of dating violence. And then you can see 44% of all students have been in an abusive relationship by the time they graduate from college. So this is real, and it's in our schools, and so we need to help educate and protect our students. And then about 1 in 12 high school students have experienced some form of physical dating violence. So we need to make sure students know, when does it cross the line? You know, and so we will clearly outline them too. And one thing that we really have to hit on is through technology. That's a new world coming up for us, and it can happen online, in person, or through technology. So we'll walk them through what does a normal relationship look like, and when does it start getting to the point where it could move from healthy to abusive, and with unhealthy in the middle, and it is a spectrum that goes on. So we clearly outline what a healthy relationship looks like when it starts getting to unhealthy, and then when it does cross the line to abusive relationship. So we will go through and explain the digital abuse. This one is new coming out, and maybe not everyone's aware of things that are happening online for students. You know, things like being expected to give every password to their relationship partner, or not being able to post certain things is very limiting. So we want to make sure that everyone is aware that this is happening. And as you can see, there's 2 slides, because that's how much is happening for students and what they're having to deal with on a daily basis that comes through technology. So it's a lot of things. So you were able to view videos ahead of time. We have those there. Just 2 different examples that will follow with a discussion, so they can see what this looks like in real life. The first one is how it plays out online. And then the second one is how it can play out in the schools. So we want to help them to learn, how do you build a healthy relationship. That's a goal for every parent, I would guess, with students and their children. They want them to know that they can build healthy relationships. And this works for
any type of relationships. It can be for friendships. It doesn't necessarily have to be dating. It's great information for dealing with friendships as well. So then we give them hope and tell them, where they can reach out to in the event that this struck up something and maybe they're concerned about themselves or one of their friends. We want to give them a place to reach out. So obviously, in the presentation, we will go a lot slower and a lot more in depth with our students and really take care of them as we go through this difficult topic. But another part of it, we have a second requirement, and so before a student can be provided this instruction, parents must give written consent. This is an opt-in and not an opt-out. And so parents will be provided that opportunity to give the consent. And they can make decisions for their family as they see fit, and we want to make sure we honor that. And so, again, district must obtain parent consent. This is a copy of the permission slips that will go home. And we have one for the middle schools and one for the high school. We've listed the health teaks that we're covering in this presentation, so parents are well informed. We'll give them all the information needed. We have opted to offer this 4 times, so we are required to offer it once in middle school, once in high school. We have chosen for 4 grade levels: 7th grade, 8th grade, 10th grade, and 11th grade. And the reason we've done this is to give parents the most control. Some parents may decide 7th grade is the time they want their child, maybe before they start dating. Another parent may say, you know what, I want to wait for 8th grade, or I want to wait for high school, and parents have that opportunity. So we wanted to give them as much options as possible to make the decision that works best for their family. So we will send those home. And then our third requirement is that we have to make the materials available to parents. They can view what I just presented to you. They will also be able to view in the event that it's voted in, that you guys have voted for it. So you'll see what it looks like. I have our counseling webpage under departments. You can go to that. And then our Wildcat University presentations, you will, once it's voted in, you will see that icon go up, and parents will be able to access the full presentation at any time, be able to see anything that would be presented to their students. We are also going to present this to parents virtually next Wednesday through our Wildcat University, so parents can sit through the entire presentation and hear what we're going to say when we slow it down and really give examples and talk through it. I will be presenting along with some of our middle school and high school counselors, so parents will be able to view that. It'll be recorded and posted online as well, so they will be able to see everything that we have so they can make an informed decision for themselves and their families. So that's all I have for you tonight. And do you have any questions?
That's part of Senate Bill 9, wasn't it, 2021, when this was all passed?
Some of it is, yeah, and the parents that opt in. Mm-hmm.
I make the motion, we accept the superintendent's recommendation to approve the dating violence curriculum as presented.
We have a motion by Ms. Jones, a second by Mr. Carson. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor? Motion carries 6-0.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Item number 10, board member comments. Do we have any board member comments? Okay, future business meetings. The next school board meeting will be held on May 10th, 2023 at 5:30 p.m. Mr. Williams.
Make a motion to adjourn.
I have a motion by Mr. Williams, a second by Ms. Traylor. Do we have any discussion? All those in favor? Motion carries 6-0. We will see you in May.